Huge thank you to our live in studio audience. They are amazing. Bryan, they're clapping for you. Welcome into this week's episode of the Young Dad Podcast. I'm Jay. Not with us today is Ron. However, we are joined by our awesome guest, Bryan, who you heard a little bit about in the show intro. Bryan, how are you today?
Doing well, Jay. Thank you very much for having me on, man. I've been looking forward to this.
I have too. It's been, a month in the making?
Yeah, something like that. That's what,
A lot of
from
posts back and
from
forth.
my from my assistant who handles all that kind of scheduling stuff. But here we are.
Yes, and your team, they are great. They are so easy to work with. So just huge compliments to your team, to you,
Thank you.
your podcast. It's great. But we're going to talk more about your show and more about you here in a minute. So a little bit about you, in addition to what I mentioned in the intro. In the intro, I mentioned you're a husband, you're a proud father, 2 adult sons, championship basketball coach, 20 years of coaching, retired. You're also a Marine Corps veteran. So first, before we jump further, I want to thank you for your service to our country,
Thank you
for
the support.
serving in our military and our armed forces. Means a lot to us in our show. Our grandfathers were veterans in Vietnam and Korea and World War II. So we have a long line of military history in our family. So it's an honor. We appreciate that. Huge shout out to you. Thank you for your service and all the other veterans that are listening. Like I mentioned, you were a basketball coach of 20 years, and now you host the Dad Up podcast and coach dads. A little bit more that I was able to find about you. I did stalk you reasonably, not too much. I didn't find out where you live or anything. You coach countless fathers on learning tools and strategies in parenting. You've also been featured on the radio, various publications, and even been interviewed by CNN for the work you are doing for dads. You are currently working, I believe, according to your site, on your first book, Dad Up, and you hope it's going to serve as a useful tool for any parent. You and your wife, Andrea, currently reside in California with your 2 sons, Blake and Brett, who I mentioned are adults. They're grown. So that's the paper, a little bit about you. So tell us just a little bit more about you, your fatherhood journey, and kind of how Dad Up got started. And I want the story. I want the long answer.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's a quick version of me, but my journey started very, very early on, and I grew up in a household that my parents to this day, over 50 years, still married. And I grew up in a very loving household. But I also grew up in a household where both my parents worked very long hours. They were blue collar workers, and they were hardly ever home. And it had an impact on me as a young man. I played a lot of sports, from swimming, water polo, wrestling, basketball. I played all kinds of different sports. So I was a pretty active kid. And I can tell you, Jay, on one hand, how many practices or games my parents came to in all my years. So that tells you that my parents just couldn't be there for me to support me in my extracurricular activities. I used to ride to practices and games with my friends' parents because I didn't have a ride. And so that right there kind of instilled this desire in me to not be that way as a parent. Even though I was far from having kids, I did not want to be a dad that was sort of disconnected from his kids. I wanted to be very active. So I knew that at a very young age. When my wife and I had kids, I took it very seriously. I mean, I was all in. I went to all of her appointments. I did all the doctor's appointments after they were born, all that kind of stuff. And even so, when they started playing sports at 4 years old, I started coaching. And it started off with Little League. I started coaching and turned into Little League, turned into football, turned into basketball, turned into flag football. I mean, it was just all those sports that they played, I was there. And my feeling was not that I have to do these things, not that I have to take my kid to these practices, because I didn't, right? I get to do these things. I get to take my boys to their practices. I get to take my boys to their games. And if I'm going to get to have that opportunity to do that, why not get involved too? And that would give me that much better of a bond or relationship with my boys. So that's what I did. I took it very seriously, and I coached my kids from the ages of 4 all the way up through high school, and continued even coaching at the high school level. And when my boys are already gone, they were in college and off doing their thing. And I was still coaching at the high school level because I loved pouring into these young men and teaching them how to be men. And a lot of these young men didn't have dads. So that was something that I took very seriously. And I just, a year and a half ago, I retired. I wanted to spend more time at home with my wife, and she used to be what we call a coach's widow, but not anymore. So I spend my evenings now with her and really enjoy it. I do miss coaching. I don't miss the games or the practices. I miss being around the guys. So I do go to games every once in a while just to catch up with the guys and see how they're doing. But yeah, it's just been a huge part of my life as a coach. And that's something that I've will always cherish. And I still get recognized by some, younger boys that I coached when they were little that are now grown adults that still recognize me out in town, and they call me coach. Hey, coach. So it's just a cool thing that I was a part of, and I'm really blessed by it. But yeah, as you said, my boys are grown now, 24 and soon to be 22. And my younger son is a junior in college. He played college basketball, and he's a junior in college now. Actually, he'll be a senior. I should say he's going to be a senior. He just finished his junior year. So, and then my older son works in sales, and he works for a company doing kind of PTSD and anxiety treatments for clients. And so he works in sales and makes a good living. And yeah, I couldn't be more proud of how they've grown and how they've turned out. And that's where I'm at. I started you asked the question about the podcast and why it got started. And it's very interesting because I was so involved with my boys' lives. There was a point, Jay, where my younger son was a senior in high school. And I knew that once he graduated, he was going to be gone off to college and doing his thing. And I felt a sudden void when he was a senior in high school. I felt a sudden void that my fatherhood journey was coming to an end. My fatherhood role was going to end. Now we know that's not true. We know that, we're going to be dads forever. But I felt like I had been so involved, and now I'm not going to be able to be involved in anything because they're grown adults doing their own thing, living their own lives. What's next? What do I do next? And it was a matter of talking to some family members that encouraged me to consider doing a podcast to help other dads. And I'd listened to a few podcasts, but didn't really know much about them. And so I did a little digging, a little research, and decided that's what I would do. And here we are 3.5 years later, 100, almost 200 episodes in. And like you said, I've been on radio, been in publications, and was interviewed by CNN a couple years ago. Met some phenomenal people, interviewed some big high profile guests. It's been a lot of fun. So that is me, Jay.
I love it. A couple of the things you mentioned there, just, you couldn't give up coaching even after your sons were gone because you just love pouring into the kids, into the youth, into these young men who needed it, who you recognized the need and you saw a need and you filled a need. And that's one of my favorite things about coaching. I'm in the little league phase still with my daughter. But I get to coach her teams. I'm the exact same way. If she's on a team, I want to be coaching or a part of it somehow. Except for cheer, I don't want to be mixed in with the cheer squad too much right now, and I don't think cheer's going to stick. But if she's there and I'm capable and I can do it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be there. I think that if dads are able to, and they're involved, and they have the resources and the time and the ability, be involved with your kids. I think that's so important to their development, to your relationship with them, to be involved in that way. Coach your kids' teams is so much fun, and you get so much more out of it because you're not only pouring into your kid, you're pouring into these other kids who might not have strong male role models at home or
exactly
in their lives that need it. Even at a young age, they have an example. And from that, what you mentioned, that you still have kids today that you coached when they were boys who are now men that still see you. They're like, yo, what up, coach? I mean, I've done that.
Mm-hmm.
If I go back home to California, I'll do that if I saw them or anything like that. I had 4 different basketball coaches and throughout 4 years of high school. I would still recognize each one of those guys. I would recognize like there's Coach Rob, who was just one of the coaches and athletic director at one of the high schools I went to. He was a really cool dude. He was tough on all of us boys, but he was a great guy. He was super fun. We all would call him Coach Rob, and if I saw him today, I would walk up to him, shake his hand, give him a big old hug, and just tell him thank you. Um, and that's for me one of the things I love when I'm like out at the grocery store. Like I've only gone through 2 seasons of coaching and being on the board of the little league. Um, but if I'm at the grocery store and the kids see me, like they'll come up to me and they'll say, "Yo, what up, Coach Jay?" Or "Hi, Coach Jay." Like, do you remember me? Do you remember my name? And I'm like, you got so big over a year. Like I had this happen just this last year. The little boy came up to me and he's like, "Hey, Coach Jay." And I'm like, oh my goodness, you're so much bigger. Like you're now playing in, I was coaching T-ball the last 2 years. He moved up to rookies, and just being able to see these kids and then see them on the field again, see them still playing baseball, see them still growing and developing and happy and healthy is such a good feeling. And them still like being able to remember my name a year later just means I did something right. The
Mm-hmm.
thank you text at the end of the season, they make me cry. I got
Mm-hmm.
I got a few thank you texts, not a lot, but probably 2 or 3. And they were so heartfelt. They were so meaningful. And they were just so like appreciative of just like, thank you for pouring into my boy. Thank you for pouring into, my son. It's so appreciated your patience and everything. And I did not have an easy season last year. I had 2 kids on the spectrum. I had a kid with ADHD. Um, it I had a really poor attendance turnout, so I had every struggle come my way. I was like the one coach. I was just struggling every week, and it just made it so much better. Like in the end, it was bittersweet, like seeing these kids that were there just develop and gain these skills. And I mean, that's one of the best things about coaching is just seeing these kids develop and turn into something that their parents didn't even think they could be or
Mm-hmm.
do, and just blow their minds. It's a lot of fun. I personally, coaching is super fun. I plan to do it for as long as I'm able to, and no matter the sport. If not, I'm going to be right there next to the dugout yelling at the kids. I'll be the biggest fan, biggest supporter, biggest cheerleader, #1 fan. I'm gonna have signs for all the girls on the softball team. Go crazy in the stands. I'm gonna be
Right.
nuts. So that's how I am, and that's how it should be for dads. If you're not on the field, you're not
Mm-hmm.
in the dugout, you're not on the sideline. You need to be in that front row every single time, supportive, there, present, because your kids are always gonna remember who showed up for them. Like you mentioned that perfectly. Like you can count on one hand how many times they were there. Granted, circumstances, but you did a lot of sports. There was a lot of opportunity, and that weighed on you and
Mm-hmm.
that carries you into how you want to change, what you want to do different as a father. Um, so it's huge. Kids are going to remember who showed up. Your boys, they're going to cherish that forever, and they're going to pour that into the next generation. And it's just going to keep pouring from there because they're like, well, my dad was there. Grandpa was always there. Grandpa's here right now. Heck, he's right there, um, kind of thing. So I just think
Yeah.
that's all really
No, you're
cool. Just to
absolutely
echo
right. I
some of those
think that,
points.
yeah, I think, when I think about kids, when I talk to dads, some of the dads that I coach, one of the things that I talk to them about is, listen, I know that maybe you have a work schedule that doesn't allow you a lot of time to attend the games. You have to try to find a way. And for me, what I did as a dad and someone who worked in corporate America, in order for me to make the games, to coach the games, I would get to the office at 4:30 in the morning so I could leave at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to go coach games. So
Mm-hmm.
I sacrificed a little bit of my sleep, getting into the office earlier, so that way I could make sure I was there for my boys. And so maybe it's something like that. If my work didn't allow me to do those things, Jay, I would have quit. I would have went to
Mm-hmm.
another line of work. I would have went to another company because my family came first. And that's how I saw it. I'm going to give you everything I got when I'm here at the office. But when it's family time, it's family time. And I lived by that. And I have to tell you parents out there, when your son or daughter is playing in a sport and they look up in the stands, they're not looking up in the stands at everybody. They're looking up in the stands to see who's there, who came for them, who's there to cheer them on. They're looking for you. They're looking for a relative. They're looking for their grandparents. They're looking for somebody they know from their family to be there supporting them. So if you can't make the sacrifice or you're too tired, you got to snap out of it and be there for your child, because your child will remember that you weren't there. And I have to tell you, I would hate for one of those times to be the one time little Billy actually made a 3-pointer for the very first time and you weren't there to see it. I think about
100%.
stuff like that. And that's why I wanted to make sure I was at everything. And so it only made sense that I coached. So that way I was forced to be at everything. I was the coach.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I did it. And my parents, on one hand, no joke. Now, they were great parents, but they just had to work. But I will tell you this, I wrestled in high school and there was a tournament that I had to wrestle in. And I was in 10th grade and I still remember this distinctly like it was yesterday. And this is how much of an impact being a parent to your child has on the child. I was in 10th grade, wrestled in a tournament. I had 2 matches. The first one I wrestled and I won, and I had to wait about 2.5 hours for my next match. My dad didn't want to wait. He said, "Hey man, get your stuff. Let's get out of here." I'm like, "Dad, I have another match. I can't leave." He's like, no, I'm not waiting around anymore. Go tell your coach that you got to go. We have stuff we have to do. We can't be sitting here all day. And he forced me to go over and tell my coach I have to leave. And I had to forfeit that next match. Now I remember that like it was yesterday. Mm-hmm. And it hurt me because I wanted to show my dad what I could do on the mat. I wanted to show my dad that I was good at wrestling. I wanted to show my dad how happy I was that he was there by, doing this sport. And he forced me to leave. And I would never, ever, ever do that to my kids. My kids can tell me that they don't want to play a sport, and I'm fine with that. If you don't want to play soccer, great. We're going to finish the season, but when we're finished the season, then we can move on to something else if you don't like soccer. I'm fine with that. But you're going to do something extra, and I'm going to make sure I'm there to support you. So
100%. 100%, and can agree with that more. Like I could remember a few times where I wish my dad was there, but he wasn't there. I believe I was in and I think it goes beyond sports as well. Whatever the extra thing your kid's doing, obviously for us dads, we want our kids to be in sports. We want them to be active. Not all kids click that way. It could be theater. It could be dance. It could be choir, whatever it might look like. It might look different for a lot of dads. So I want to give that caveat. But whatever it is, the point here is, like you mentioned so perfectly, when a kid looks up at the stands, no matter what they're doing or out into the crowd or whatever, they're not looking at everybody just to see, oh, wow, look at all these cool people. They're all here for all of us. They're looking who's there for them. Like you mentioned, you can't put that in a more perfect way. Like I remember I was at my daughter's kindergarten graduation. I got there early so I could sit smack dab in the front row. And I'm right there in the front row. As soon as she walks in those doors, eye contact, she looks at me. They're doing like singing and songs and stuff like that. She just kept looking over at me, and because she knew I was right there. Her mom, I think, was somewhere in the back. I didn't see her. Didn't really.
She wanted to make sure she could see you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's just, where I'm always going to be. I'm always going to be in the front. Like I'm always going to be there. Support you front row if I'm not there next to you singing with you or anything like that. So it's just so important, and you have to make that sacrifice. That sacrifice is going to look different for everyone. Well, I've had to do the same thing, or I've had to go into work earlier, so I'm off earlier. So I still get paid the same, but I can do the things that matter to me most, because that's my kids, that's my family, that's my girls. They matter more to me than this job matters.
Right.
And I can find another job tomorrow if I really, really wanted to. I could go to a different job tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of looking at it here, I really wanted to kind of talk about the mission of the Dad Up podcast, because I think it's put together so well, and kind of I want to know the why behind it. So the mission of the Dad Up podcast, you can kind of see it behind you, For dads, about dads, being dads. Where did that come from? How did you come up with it? And why that mission?
It's a lesson. It's a it kind of sums up what it is to be a dad. And the podcast really, I mean, yeah, it's for dads, but it's for parents. It really is. I mean, honestly, I have 60% of my followers are men and 40% are women. So I have a lot of moms that follow the show. So yeah, I originally started as for dads, and I wanted to open up their world and share their world about being a dad with other people. And the hope behind it, the mission behind it was, if I can show you that you can still be successful in your career and you can still be successful at, whatever job it is you're doing. If you're an entrepreneur, you can still be successful in that and still be a successful father, because I've done it and I'm going to interview guys that have done it. And so that was kind of the mission behind it. I want to interview guys that have been phenomenal dads, but have also been phenomenal in their careers, whatever it is. And if I can inspire one dad to turn his life around, to be better for his kids, then I call that a win. And I've had countless people reach out to me. I mean, I had to hire a team to handle my emails, because I get people that email with either questions or just to tell me their thoughts or give me their, what they thought of my last episode, and how it inspired them. I mean, I get those things all the time, and it's encouraging. It means that my show's doing what it's supposed to do. Is listen, our kids are our future, right? Our kids are our future. And if we aren't showing them right by being present for them, they're going to lead down a difficult road. They're going to have a difficult road growing up. And that relationship that you have with your kids is crucial. And so if you don't have a strong relationship with your child right now, it's time to change it. And it can be changed. It can be fixed. But it has to come from you. You've got to want it. And that's why I put about being dads, because they wanted it. The guys that are on my show wanted it. And so that was really the mission behind those three statements. And I've had women on my show too. I've had plenty of moms on my show, whether they've been authors or I've had reality TV stars on my show. I had my wife on my show. So I mean, it's really about parenting, and it's not so much about being a dad, but the mission behind my podcast is for dads. Yeah.
No, I love that. And, I think it's interesting because I hear that a lot, to where that like split you mentioned, that 60-40, that's pretty ballpark to where we're at. We're about 70-30 men to women, but it's still like 30%. It might be closer to 40, actually, pretty similar, but that's pretty similar across like a lot of platforms. At least guys I've talked to and things like that, which is really interesting because it shows that these women who are moms want their dads to be better dads. They want to figure out, how can I help my significant other? How can I help my husband, my boyfriend, my fiance, whatever he is, be better? How can I help him help himself? Because obviously we're confiding in our partners. We're talking to them. We're telling them the things, or at least we hopefully are. Hopefully that's your resource and your outlet for all those things that are, deeply bothering you, or feel like you're inadequate in some way about being a parent with your other parent that you're with. And it's so interesting because that's why there's so much female listenership across a lot of our platforms and a lot of our podcasts, because women want to help their husbands who are talking to them about, hey, I'm feeling inadequate about being a dad, I'm struggling. And I think the biggest takeaway from a lot of what you just mentioned, dad, you got to want it. You have to want to be a dad, and you have to figure out how it's going to look. But really what it comes down to is just time. How are you going to change that time that you either aren't putting in right now that's hurting your relationship, and how are you going to put that time into it?
Mm-hmm.
That time's still there. You just have it in the wrong place right now. And I think with that, having an honest conversation with yourself about time, like, why do I feel like my relationship's struggling with my kids? Okay, I'm not spending enough time with them. Where am I spending this time? Why am I spending so much
Right.
time, checked out, not present, somewhere else, out doing these things? Or why am I not including my kids in some of these things? Like, yes, that might be my hobby, but would they also enjoy going fishing with me on a Saturday morning? Would they also enjoy waking up and cooking breakfast with me? Would they also enjoy cooking dinner with me instead of being separated for that time? Where can I
Mm-hmm.
include them into my daily routine as it is, and
Mm-hmm.
just spend that time with them? Because that's what kids want. They just want your time. There's that viral Facebook
Mm-hmm.
post that I've seen a bunch of times about the kid, asking how much his dad makes. Dad gets offended,
Yep.
finally breaks
I know the
down. He
one you're
tells
talking
them,
about.
yeah, I make 40 something dollars an hour. And the kid goes back, rubs through all his money, his allowance, and everything. Dad, I want to buy an hour of your time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's so powerful. And then on top of that, I don't know how true it. I haven't vetted it, but it's pretty accurate. Like, we spend 75% of the time we're going to spend with our kids in their lifetime by the time they're age 12.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of time that goes by. By the time they're 18 and out of the house, it's 90% of the time we're going to spend with them in their lifetime is already done and gone. It's like, that's some really short years.
Yep.
And when you put that in context, however old your kid is, like, my oldest is 6. So 37.5% of time that I'm ever going to spend with her is already gone. But add to that I only have her every other week, like, that's probably a little bit higher for the amount of time I'm personally going to spend with her in this time frame. So it's
Mm-hmm.
perspective. A lot of it's perspective. Where are you going to sacrifice? It's not where you're willing to sacrifice. Where are you going to sacrifice? It has to be an active action. There's not a compromise here. Like you mentioned, if you want to do it,
Right.
you have to do it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts,
Right.
willings, or anything. Like, you're gonna do it. You have to find it.
Yeah. I want to continue with what you were just talking about there. I want to ask you a question though, Jay. And this is not. I'm not trying to be funny. I just want to ask you a serious question.
Of course.
Spell love for me.
I know this one, but LOVE.
You know how kids spell love?
I do. TIME.
Correct. Kids spell love Time. Dads look and they say, "All right, well, I'm giving my kid love. I'm buying him stuff. I'm letting him do stuff. I'm giving him hugs." But they don't want they need that stuff. They need you to give them hugs and they need you to give them affection. They need you to give them those kinds of things. But they want to know, what is the time that I get with you? And for me right now, with my boys being older, they're adults. They go off on their own and do their own thing. But they have, in the last year and a half, have really taken up golf. And the two of them go golfing together a lot. So what did I do? Took up golf. And I don't golf. I am a terrible golfer. And I did it because I know that if I say to my boys, "Hey, let's go golfing," they'll want to go because they want to golf, and I'll get to be with them. So even though they're grown adults, I have managed to figure out a way to still be active in their lives just by being interested in the things that they're interested in. So yeah, your kid may not like going to Home Depot. That's because he's not interested in Home Depot. Find out what your kids are interested in and then be interested in them. And if you do that, it'll make the time thing that much easier. So if your kid likes to build Legos, build Legos with him. Build something that you want to build, or help him build something, but play Legos. If your daughter likes to go get her nails done, dads likes to go get her nails done, go get your nails done. It's
Nothing
not
beats a good
you
manicure either.
don't
Just saying.
dude, I go, my wife gets irritated because I go probably every other week and get a manicure. And I get pedicures because I'm a runner. I like that my feet to be nice and fresh. So
Hmm.
I get pedicures and manicures. I don't have daughters, But if I did, that would be something that my daughter and I would do. My wife and I do it now together as kind of our little thing. But if I had a daughter, that's what I would want to do if she wanted to do those things. So, guys, I'm telling you, it's so easy to find that time because that's what kids need from you. They need love, and they spell love Time. And you need to figure out a way to put those together to where you're satisfied with how much time you're giving them and they're satisfied with the love that you're giving them.
100%. And, a way that I've framed that before, so I work in mental health, I work with youth and families. So I work with a lot of parents and I'm part of a lot of dad groups, very common there, but to where they feel like they don't connect with their kids. They're not connecting with them emotionally or mentally or behaviorally, and they won't talk to them. They won't open up. And it all comes back to, like you said, it comes back to that time. But another layer to that, like you mentioned, is pick up their interest with them. Like you mentioned, you're a terrible golfer, but you're doing it anyway because you are spending time with your kids, and that's what matters most. And they're enjoying spending that time with you. And during that time that you guys are spending together, you guys probably talk without realizing that you guys are talking and opening up to each other and supporting each other and getting things off your chest and working through things. Because like in those moments, and I call that like hopping on their train. You're hopping on their train along with them. You're on their ride. Now they're the conductor, and you're just on the train. You're just there to support them. You're hopping on that train, and you're on that ride, and it's amazing what happens when you just ask your kid. I see it so often in dad groups, and it drives me bonkers because I've commented on it 100 times, probably more at this point. But what do I do with my kid? What are some fun things to spend time with them? Like, no matter what age, as long as they're talking, if they're at a talking age, like, yes, that's probably the best time to ask them. But ask them a very simple question, and this question might blow your mind. What do you want to do? What would be fun for you? And no matter what they say, Legos, going to the park, playing basketball, if you have a community pool that you're a part of, whatever it might be, whatever that looks like, whatever they say, no questions asked, just do it. If it's Legos, build the Legos. If it's getting a pedicure with your daughter, go get a pedicure with your daughter. If it's even just simple of going to the gas station and getting a slushie, go on that walk and go get that slushie or something. Like maybe it's just a car ride. All that your child wants, especially if you're struggling with connecting with them and interacting with them and the emotional side of things and the mental health side of things, then that one-on-one time that you spend with your kid is crucial because, like we've been saying, like they just want your time. And when they have that time and they know it's their time, they know they're not going to be interrupted. They know you're fully present. That's another huge part of it that we'll get into a second, I'm sure. But be present for that time and show up and enjoy it. Be active, be engaged, because then they'll start talking. They won't even realize that they're talking and opening up to you and that they're working through these things that might be bothering them. And you're able to support them and work through it. And, you'll realize as you keep spending that one-on-one time with them that things change. Behaviors get better around home. They're more upbeat. They're happier because their love tank is filled. And you're happier because you guys are connecting. That time's there. Everything's there. You have to stay consistent with it and keep doing it. But yeah.
You're absolutely right. And I think that, the amount of time that you spend with your kids really to build that bond and that trust. Kids want to feel like they're safe around you. So my boys always understood that my home is a safe space. So if they need to talk to me, because they played sports, we always used the team analogy, but I would tell them, you can come talk to me at any time you need to talk to me. I'm on your team. And if it's something that you've done wrong or something that you should have done and you didn't do, you can still come and talk to me about it. I'm not going to say I won't be disappointed, but it doesn't mean that I don't love you any less. And I'm going to help you work through whatever that is. So my boys understood that our home was a safe space. Now, take the flip side of that. Had I not had that kind of relationship with my boys growing up, had I constantly just focused on my career and was outside the home a lot, they did their own thing. We grew up and we've grown apart over the years. Now they're into the high school years and they're really going through some challenges. Guess who they're not going to? Dad.
You.
Because
They're going
dad
to a
wasn't
group of
there
friends.
for me growing up. They're going to somebody else. And who knows who that somebody else is. And so I always wanted my boys to understand that you can always come to me and I'm always going to be there for you. And I showed that by doing it, not just by telling them, by doing it. And so for you guys out there, even moms out there, if you're having trouble connecting with your kids, you've got to put the time in and you've got to be disciplined in spending that time with them. It's super important. And trust me, they will recognize it if you do that. It is intentional time. So none of that. That's one of the things that I coach when I talk to some of my dad coaches that I call, some of the dads that I coach. One of the things that they have to do through our coaching program is they have to spend one-on-one time with their kids every single day. You know how hard that is? That's tough.
Yeah.
That is tough because we have busy lives. We have things we have to do. We have busy lives. So I challenge them to find ways to incorporate their kids in the stuff that they have to do. If it means, hey, I have to run to the grocery store and get some stuff for the house, I want you to go with me because I want to talk to you about some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you just go and have a conversation. Or like you said, maybe it's a drive. But some of the dads that I coach, I tell them, listen, I want you spending at least 10 minutes every single day, one-on-one time. No distractions, just you and your kid. And if you have 3 kids, that means you're spending 10 minutes at least with each one of them every single day. And I promise you, if you make that change, if you make that switch, I promise you, you will see a difference in your relationship with your child, and the bond with your child will be much stronger. I promise. I guarantee it.
100%. And just to echo a couple of things there, you mentioned that as their kids get older, they're going to go through different stages. When things get tough, if they're not turning to you, then it might not just be a who they're turning to, but what they're turning to. They could
Correct.
turn to substances. They could turn to sex. They could turn to, um, you know, different ideations and different things like that aren't the healthiest headspace for them to be. They might turn to very toxic online gaming communities. Who knows what they could turn to? But it's not just who they could turn to, but what they could turn to and what those different paths lead down. Is so important to be there early and always be there. And on top of that, I love that you mentioned, 10 minutes a day, but to add a layer to that, because that's the 2 places I see men feel like they're not connected with their kids. That 10 minutes one-on-one. One thing that I've written about on my blog, on the website, when I bonus content from last season 3, the well-balanced dad diet, is if you're not able to start, every single day, start with something small. Start 20 minutes 3 times a week, 20 minutes 5 times a week. That not only goes for your child, but it also goes for your partner as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah,
you have to have that
absolutely.
relationship with your partner. If you're not having that there, that's also a huge element here to, being a dad and, having a home with a significant other, to making sure that you pour that time into your relationship as well. Because at the end of it,
Mm-hmm.
and you know this very well, where you are, you retired and you gave this time back to your wife, to where you
Mm-hmm.
guys are now re-experiencing, a relationship and rebuilding that, and not
Mm-hmm.
rebuilding, but adding on to that, rediscovering it, learning about each other again. And that's, really cool place to be, because you just went through the last 20 years of raising kids together and as parents, and now it's just Bryan and Andrea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
That's who was there
you know,
before, and that's who's there after now.
exactly. And, my relationship with my wife, I call her queen, because she's my world. That's where my foundation of my family started, was with her. And
Mm-hmm.
I look at our foundation to our kids, to our family. I look at our foundation and I ask, are there any cracks? Is the foundation weak? And that foundation is your relationship with your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you guys are separated, let's say you guys are divorced, right? If you have a strong
Present.
foundation, meaning you have a good, there you go. you have a good relationship with your child's mother or father, even though you guys are divorced, if you have a good relationship, you can still make that foundation solid. But for me, being married, my wife and I have been together for over 26 years. Our foundation is solid. And one of the things that we do regularly, believe it or not, is, and I've talked about this on my show before, is we actually have a marriage coach. And we go see a marriage coach once every other month. And we've been seeing this marriage coach for about the last, I want to say 5 years or so, about the last 5 years. And we didn't do that because we have problems. She's a licensed therapist, family therapist. And we didn't go to her because we had problems. We went to her so we don't have problems. That's why we go to her. And we actually enjoy our time with her. We look forward to it every single week. Every single month. We look forward to doing that with her. And it has really opened up our relationship even more. And my wife and I know that our foundation of our relationship is the direct result of what our boys will grow up into. So they see me and how I treat their mom. They know that that's how they're to treat a lady or treat another person, a girl. So the way that I treat my wife is how they should treat a woman. And the way that my wife treats me is how my boys should be treated by a woman. So 100%. When they get outside the house, they have that lesson already instilled in them because they grew up with us, right? So they see it. They lived it. So don't get me wrong. There have always been, challenges. We have had challenges.
Yeah.
And we've had struggles. Everybody goes through that. But how we fix those things is where the lesson comes from. So that's where the lesson comes from. Is how did we fix it? How did we get stronger from it? And, it's the same thing with parenting. Parenting, they say in school, you get the lesson, then the test, right? In parenting, you get the test and then the lesson. So you get the kid and then you have to try to figure out the lesson, how to raise them, right?
100%.
But in a relationship, it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
In a relationship, we get the test. The test is the relationship. And now we have to get the lesson, which is how do we build on this relationship? How do we make it stronger? And my wife and I have, here and there struggles here and there, but my wife and I have done it and my boys witnessed it. So
100%. And I just love the proactive approach there. You don't have to have issues to go to a coach, to go to a marriage counselor. You don't have to have issues to go. It's a great thing to do. Like I work in mental health, but actually before that, I did see your story with happy girlfriends there. You crossed out girlfriends and replaced queen there.
Yeah.
I'm like, I love that. I love that. That was awesome. It was my first time posting yesterday.
She doesn't like it. She doesn't like it. She hates that I call her queen, but she's my queen. She's
100%.
Listen, let me just say this. And I know I cut you off, but let me just say this. In our relationship, and I hear dads, particularly because I coach dads, I hear them say this, hey, because that's one of the things I work on when I coach dads is I talk about their relationship with their spouse or with the child's mother. So we talk about that relationship because I want to help strengthen it. And that's part of the program as well. So I talk to them about it and they say, listen, I feel like I'm giving 50%. She's not giving 50%. And we're struggling in these areas. And I go, well, that's your problem right there. Number one, you're not to be giving 50% and she's to be giving 50%. You need to be giving 100% and she needs to give 100%. You both are giving 100% to the relationship, not 50. Because if you give 50, the relationship's going to fall apart. I'm only giving you 50% of me, dear. So with my wife, she's my queen. Yes, I'm going to give her 100% of my time, my relationship, my love. She gets 100% of it. And she does the same for me. And I live by that. Yeah. So that's just a little tangent, but my wife, she just smirks when I call her queen. So
I love
it's
that.
all cute.
I love that. She loves it. She's not letting on that. She low key loves it. She would be devastated if you stopped. But I think a really good part of that you mentioned is also like your kids are looking to you guys in the home. And I feel like that's so important. Like with my kids being divorced, we've been divorced about 2 years now, so we've gone through a couple Mother's Days, birthdays, and things like this. And my ex-wife's been remarried now. Whole different thing to get into, but remarried and things like that. So it's like they see how I still treat her. Like I never really talk bad about her in front of the kids. Occasionally something slips out of frustration or something like that, and sometimes something minor slips, but it's not constant. And I see that, and it makes me sick to when men who are divorced are just bashing their exes in these dad groups. Like, yes, it's an appropriate place to do so, but also at the same time, you're never going to make progress in your co-parenting if you don't get over yourself. You just got to get over
Right.
it. Like, just get over it. And I
Right.
actually wrote about that over Father's Day with the divorcee dish. Like, one of the big things, probably the biggest thing you have to do as a single dad now, if going through a divorce and co-parenting, is you got to get over yourself. Things are never going to be
Mm-hmm.
perfect ever again. They're not going to go back to the way they were. They're not going to change. You just have to move forward, get over yourself, let go. Let go of that anger, let go of that frustration, let go of that hatred. Let it go because it's going to impact you as a dad. It's going to impact you as a father. It's going to impact your relationship with your kids if you're holding on to that in the slightest. If you want to have a healthy co-parenting relationship, let's say you have young kids and they're potty training, that has to be a consistent thing between the two households. But if you're not even able to communicate about basic things like appointments or, anything that's transactional, and that's how it should be transactional. You need to know this. This is what I need to tell you, and that's it. We don't need to have a whole conversation. We don't need to talk about all these things. Keep it transactional. But if it comes to like potty training or anything big that needs to be consistent between the two households, if you guys can't have that conversation, guess who's going to suffer? Not their
Mm-hmm.
mom, not you.
Right.
Your kid's going to suffer because they're confused about how to use the freaking bathroom. And then guess where that's going to lay over to? School, preschool. They're going to be in first grade and still have issues, because there was a lack of consistency between the two homes. And that's one thing that I will always compliment my ex-wife for, is that we have been able to have that communication about, hey, our youngest is almost 3. She's potty trained, but it was that conversation like, hey, I'm noticing that she's waking up pretty dry in her pull-up. I'm going to try transitioning her to underwear. Just so you know, my ex-wife's, okay, we have 5 more pull-ups and then we'll start doing the same here for consistency and stuff. And that's what's important. So you have to have that communication and be able to talk about that, to where yesterday my ex-wife texted me and she was like, hey, do you have the girls' birth certificates? I'm like, yeah, I have them. Like, they're locked up. You have pictures. Like, I've sent them to you. Like, look back through our pictures and whatnot. She's like, okay, cool. I found them. I just wasn't sure. She's like, I'm like, why do you need them? She's like, oh, I saw TikTok and freaked out about not having birth certificates. So I was like, oh my God. But it comes down to those little things, to be able to make sure you can communicate it when you need to communicate with your co-parent. So vital. So you have to, and men don't like hearing that, but you have to put yourself aside and you have to let go and you have to get over it and move on with your life, because there's going to be something better ahead for you. I promise. But you can't open up those doors. You can't allow those blessings to come into your life if you're holding on to something that's not benefiting you or serving you. Um, so yeah, I think those were what I wanted to say from what you mentioned. So, um,
Yeah. I mean, I think that if dads are, you know, I'm not a big fan of, I've heard dads, bashing on their ex, and I've heard it the other way around too. I've heard, women bashing on their ex as well. I'm not a big fan of that. And I think that if that's the road that you're taking, it's going to be tough for you to have a working co-parenting relationship in the future or going forward. I think I'll put it to you this way: what is doing that getting you? What purpose is that serving? It's not making you feel any better. It's actually making you feel worse. So there's no gain for you doing it. It's not fixing anything that may be wrong. So why go through the energy of spewing what you're going to spew about the other person? It makes no sense to me. And
zero.
so it frustrates me that dads succumb to that and they give into it and they do it. And the only person that really ends up being affected by it is the child or the children. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yes, dads, if you're doing that, just stop. Just stop. Try to
Yeah.
figure it out. Try to work a way around it. You have challenge. I get it. You have issues. I get it. It's a struggle. I get it. It's very difficult. I get it. She's hard to deal with. I get it. But
Mm-hmm.
be the bigger person. Be an adult.
Yeah.
Figure it
Yeah.
out for your kids, not for her, not for your ex, for your kids. Figure it out.
Yeah. And for yourself as well. You don't deserve that as a parent to always be worrying about like what your ex is doing. It doesn't matter what she's doing. As long as you guys are on the same page for the kids, let her live her life. Or moms, if you're listening, you're single and divorced, like doesn't matter what he's doing. Is he taking care of the kids, and is he doing his part fully? If the answer is yes,
Mm-hmm.
let it go. Let it go. So many things don't
Mm-hmm.
matter and they're trivial, especially if it's giving you negative energy or it's affecting you emotionally, mentally. And if you're really struggling with those things, there's plenty of resources out there for you to go and find someone, talk to someone, find a coach, find a therapist, find a counselor, find a peer, find someone to talk to, to get those things off your chest and get that perspective. If you're
Mm-hmm.
religious, talk to your pastor, talk to your associate pastors,
Mm-hmm.
find those outlets. Like most churches, their counselors and their pastors, they do counseling to where you can go and sit
Mm-hmm.
with them and get that spiritual perspective, but also like get it off your chest and talk to someone to where it's not going to cost you anything. Um, and that's one thing that, like I mentioned, it drives me crazy in these dad groups because that's what so much of it is. And then the lack of support to where it's like someone posts something positive and it's like, oh, good luck. That's not going to last. Or good luck in that next relationship. That's not going to
Mm-hmm.
last very long. You're just going to be back
Yeah.
here where you started. And, you
Yeah.
know, it's sad because it's like,
I'd,
what
I'd
if that,
venture to
sorry, go ahead.
I'd venture to say that the dads that make those kind of comments, they're the problem, not the ex.
Yeah. And yeah, you're not too far off there. And it's like, why can't we just be happy for this guy who went through relationship repair or is working toward relationship repair and working toward reunification with
Mm-hmm.
as a family unit with the natural mother, and they're working on it together? Like, what if they were able to find that common ground? Like, we don't know. You don't know that whole story. So you're giving a negative comment because you still have something that you haven't worked through personally. You're projecting yourself.
Right.
And it's really sad. It's discouraging. So dads, if you're listening and you're one of those people making those comments, like, let's just stop and let's work. Let's turn the finger inward and reflect. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I doing that? It's not making you feel better. Like you mentioned, it's doing nothing for you. It's doing the opposite of what you're thinking it's going to do for you. Um, so, but just to
Yep.
wrap up here, Bryan, first up, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It's been a great conversation. Loved every second of it.
I feel the same way.
It's been awesome. But I would love to just, get your parting wisdom. It's kind of what I asked everyone here at the end. What would you say to the dad that's really struggling, that's really going through it, or to the husband that's really going through it with their wife? I guess both those perspectives, to the father and then to the
Mm-hmm.
husband. What's your kind of parting wisdom? What's your one piece of advice to both those guys?
Yeah, it's a great question. My advice, and I've had dads like that have reached out to me, and my advice is first, I want you to look at yourself. That's where I want you to start. Because if you can't get yourself in a place where you love who you are, it's going to be very challenging for you to love or support somebody else. So I want you to start by looking at yourself first and seeing where there are cracks in your foundation that need to be fixed. I don't know if it's, exercise. I don't know if it's yoga. I don't know if it's meditation. I don't know if it's journaling. I don't know if it's a therapist. I don't know what it is because everybody has their own thing that they need to help them work through an issue. But you need to figure out what that is first before you can try to fix or correct the challenge that you're facing. And then the second thing is you need to talk to somebody, whether it's a family member, a brother, somebody, to get that extra encouragement or that extra support. This is not somebody to talk to gossip to, or, to get their opinion in a negative. This is somebody that you really trust, somebody that you could call at 2 a.m. and ask them for help, and they would help you. So what I've done in my life, and this is something that I would encourage all dads to do, I actually have a personal board of directors. And what those guys are is there's a group of 7 guys that meet with me every other month, and we go through things in my life. So they work for me in guiding me, giving me support, giving me encouragement, and telling me truths about what I need to know in order to get myself to the next level. So I developed this thing called personal board of directors, and I actually wrote contracts for my guys. I went through a list of I want to say about 60 guys and narrowed it down to these 7. And I asked them if they'd be willing to do it, and they agreed. So I sent them a contract, said, this is what I'm expecting from you, and this is what I'm going to do for you. And then we both sign the contract, and we meet every other month. Now, I do that because I want to improve in all areas of my life. I have a financial planner on my board. I have someone who's big in his faith on my board. I have a couple of entrepreneurs on my board, and every single one of them, with the exception of one, every single one of them is married with kids. So and they're guys that I trust. They're guys that have great relationships with their families. These are the type of men that I want in my life. And so I circle myself with them, and I meet with them every other month. I would encourage for any dads out there that are challenged in certain areas, whether it's your business or your family, to get that group of guys around you and lean into them. Don't be so egotistical that you have to keep everything inside, or that you have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders and think you're going to be okay, because you're not. It takes a village to raise kids, as they say. And for you to be a productive human being and grow in all the areas of your life, you are going to need support. And so you can reach out to me if you have questions. You can reach out to Jay, or you can reach out to people that are in your inner circle that you know and trust and get support. So first work on you, and then seek outside. And once you have those 2 areas fixed, then you can start to unravel whatever challenge it is you're going through. So that's my answer. I know it was kind of long-winded, but
I love it. I love it. That was so great. Well, Bryan, thank you again. If people want to find you, they can find you on your website, obviously, daduptribe.com, Instagram at dadupodcast, Threads at dadupodcast. There's a Facebook link in the show notes, on Twitter/X, whatever it's called these days, dadupodcast. Obviously, your YouTube channel as well, and then also in your bio on Instagram, as well as on your website. You can see the link tree there, Dad Up Tribe as well. They can find all your stuff there. Is there anything I missed to where they can find you, reach out to you, talk to you, or anything?
No, I mean, I will say this. I am not big on Twitter. I just don't really, I'm not active on there. But Instagram is the main one. And obviously that's Dad Up Podcast. And then, oh, am I? I haven't even looked. Honestly, I haven't even looked.
Awesome.
Oh, that's cool. I do have people that kind of manage some of my accounts for me because it's just too much. It just takes a lot of time. But in saying that, Instagram has my link tree, and in that link tree has everything where you can find me, look me up, learn more about me. And I always answer DMs personally. I answer DMs. Unless you send me a weird DM, then I'm not going to answer you. But if you have a question, looking for coaching, something like that, you can send me a DM, and I will be more than happy to help you or encourage you or just provide support any way I can. I'm happy to do that. And I'll do this. Let me do this, Jay. Let me do this. For this show right now, I just did a thing a short time ago about offering free coaching for the month of August. All right. So for the month of August, I offered free coaching. Those slots filled up really fast. But what I'll do for you, for your show, for your audience is let's do 3. I'll take 3 guys that if they want coaching from me, I'll offer it for free for the month of August. All they got to do is reach out to you or reach out to me. They watched the episode and loved it, and they can send me a DM.
So we are recording here in August, but this actually won't come out until the first week of September.
So September. So that's
Okay,
fine.
perfect,
September.
perfect. Love it.
So we'll do it for September. That's fine. But three
Love it.
guys, if there's three guys out there that are watching this and want free coaching for the month of September, reach out to us. You can reach out to Jay or reach out to me, and I'll provide that as a service to you, Jay, and a service to your listeners and followers.
I love that. That's amazing, Bryan. It's very generous of you. Appreciate it. Well, again, Bryan, thank you so much. We could probably go for hours if we really wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
We'll
Mm-hmm.
have to do it again sometime. But again, thank you so much for just your time, your wisdom, your perspective, and sitting down talking to me here, and to all the young dads and the Young Dad podcast here. It's much appreciated. So,
no, you know what? Keep doing what you're doing, man, because it is shows like this that change lives, and shows like this that impact families in a positive way. And when you change lives and impact families in a positive way, kids benefit.
yep.
And that's the purpose, is to really help our kids be better and better, and to help you build a better relationship with them. So if you're doing this show, you're changing lives, you're building relationships within families, and it's going to help the kids. And so I commend you. Keep doing what you're doing, and appreciate you having me on. I really do.
Awesome. Audience, you guys know what to do.